On today's show, the Cavs are about a quarter of the way through the season, so I want to play a game. It's called Real or Fake. We'll take a look at some things I think are real with the Cavs, some things I think that we've seen that are not as real with the Cavs. It's all straight ahead on this Thanksgiving Day edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Locked On Cavs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in all of America. I'm your host, Danny Cunningham. I also cover the team over at my Substack, The Inside Shot, which is currently running a 50% off all annual subscription sales. So if you want more Cavs coverage, that is the place to go. The link is in the episode description, and you can find this podcast anywhere you get them. That means Apple, that means Spotify, that means anywhere else. Give us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review as well. And if you're watching on YouTube as we get started, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. In today's episode, brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can bet just $5. And if your first $5 bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets used all across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started today. So I am going to be today stealing a game from one of our national shows here at Locked On. So typically during the off season, more so when we have Locked On NBA Game Night, which I'm a part of, you can listen to that every Sunday night I'm on. But Jake Madison, who is the host of Locked On Pelicans, and John Corrales, who I think you guys know pretty well at this point because he's been on this show maybe more than anyone else that covers another team outside of potentially Tony East. Those guys do what they call real or fake. So they will bring up a topic and they will discuss whether or not they think it's a real thing or whether or not they think it's a fake thing. And because of where we are at in the season with the Cavs, because of what the sample size is with the Cavs, I think now is a pretty good time to take a look at some of the things that the Cavs have done or maybe haven't done and determine whether or not it's real or fake. So I want to start with the offensive side of the floor for the Cavs, because so far this season, the Cavs are 14th in the NBA in offense. And for further clarity, I am recording this. It is 4:45 in the afternoon on Wednesday afternoon. So there's a bunch of games tonight. Those games could impact some of the standings numbers, like where the Cavs are at in terms of offense. We'll get into defense. We will get into the Eastern Conference standings. So like those things could change a little bit, but I am doing this as of 4:45 on Wednesday before any games begin, because it will change a little bit, but it's not going to change the whole premise of the situation. So the Cavs are 14th in offense as of right now, averaging 115.6 points per 100 possession. And I think so far through the season, this is the fakest thing that the Cavs have, is their offensive metrics. I think that they have not looked nearly as strong offensively as anybody would have anticipated, but it's also the thing that I am worried about the least. Like, there are things offensively I do think to be worried about. We had basically an entire podcast yesterday about Evan Mobley and what he needs to do better on that end of the floor. And all of that stuff rings true, but I still look at who this Cavs team should be when they are full and complete and whole and think there's no way that that collection that we just saw be the second best offense in NBA history last year, there's no way that group should just be mediocre offensively, because that's what the Cavs have been so far. They have been a mediocre offense. They haven't been bad, but they haven't been good. They have been a very, very average offense, and I think it's very fake. I do. And I think the one thing that leads me to that is Darius Garland and some of the other guys that have not played. Like the game in Toronto, the Cavs played. And I know the YouTube comments were like, this guy is only making excuses for the Cavs. Like, sure, but it's really, really challenging to go win a road game without 7 rotation players. That's your third game in 4 nights, all that stuff. Like, that's a really, really big challenge for the Cavs. And offensively, they don't have enough right now. When they're full, when they're completely healthy, they have enough offensively. I fully believe that, but right now they don't. So I think it's worth looking at Darius Garland's metrics, because he's only played in 5 games this year. I would expect him to play on Friday against Atlanta. So that'll be game number 6. And, every time that he plays, we get a little bit of a bigger sample size on these things. And these numbers become a little bit less of a small sample size thing, although they are still very much a small sample size thing and will be for a while with him. But in the 5 games that Darius Garland has played so far, the Cavs are 4-1. They are 4-0 in the games that he has both started and finished. The one game that the Cavs lost that Darius Garland played was the game that he got hurt against Miami, which I do think that is something just worth noticing. Not even worth noting, just worth noticing. But in those 5 games, when Darius Garland is on the floor, the Cavs have an offensive rating of 127.9. That would be far and away the best offense in NBA history. That would be easily the best offense across the NBA so far this year. As I mentioned, it is a very small sample size type thing, but I can't look at this and say, yes, when one of the Cavs' most important players is out there, the Cavs offensively are really good. When he's not out there, they seem to fall off a cliff. And that is part of the reason why they're a mediocre offense right now. Now, there are other things that go into it. Evan Mobley needs to be better. I think if you want to be concerned with one thing offensively, that is it. I think the 3-point shooting needs to be better. The Cavs have not shot the ball as well or even close to as well from beyond the arc this year as they did last year. I think at some point they are due for some positive regression. Like they're going to have a 3-point outburst one night and they're going to win a game by 40 because of it. And it's gonna be like, oh yeah, that's the Cavs. That's going to be a thing that happens. And if I were to bet, Darius Garland is probably going to be out there when it happens because he creates so many of those good looks. And I just think because of that, because not only, and Garland is the biggest piece of this, right? He is the best offensive player for the Cavs that has missed significant time. Now, Max Strus hasn't played at all, and that certainly matters. But even a guy like Sam Merrill, who has missed the last week at this point, the Cavs are a better offensive team when he's on the floor than when he's not on the floor. DeAndre Hunter, who rested in that game against Toronto, the Cavs are a better offensive team when he's on the floor versus when he's not on the floor. So I look at this and just say, yeah, a lot of the guys that they're better with have been in and out of the lineup because Darius has been. Jared Allen has missed time. They've got a really good offensive rating with him on the floor. Donovan Mitchell's played a lot. Evan Mobley's played a lot, but Sam Merrill, DeAndre Hunter both missed time too. So I think it is just worth looking at saying, okay, the offense right now is what it is, and it's not been good enough. And if the Cavs went into the playoffs right now, playing the way they are playing offensively, they would be in significant danger. But the playoffs are a ways off. And because they will get healthier, I believe, at least I would imagine they'll get healthier. I guess you can never say anything is a certainty in that category. But I think that offensively, they're really going to grow. That is how I look at this. Like that offensive number to me, them being 14th in the offense is probably the fakest thing about their profile so far this season. Now let's flip over to the other side of the court because through the first 19 games of the season, the Cavs are 6th in defensive rating. They're allowing 111. I read that wrong. 0.7 points per 100 possessions. I think this is not entirely real, but I think it's much closer to being real than the offensive side of the ball. I like a lot of what we have seen from the Cavs offensively. I think a lot of their role players, which is if you listen to this podcast over the summer when they made some of the personnel changes that they have made, a lot of their role players are, I think, better defensively than they were last year. Naquan Tomlin, who is not somebody I talked about very much this summer because how could you have predicted that coming? When he's on the floor for the Cavs, they have a defensive rating of 103. That's a really good place to be. Dean Wade's still a good defender, even if offensively he's not been very good this year. The Cavs have been good defensively and Lonzo Ball's on the floor. Evan Mobley's been fine defensively. Donovan Mitchell's been good defensively. They're good defensively with Jared Allen, Sam Merrill. Like a lot of these guys that they have had healthy are good defensively. My question with this kind of is the same question to the offensive side of the floor. It's, well, what does it look like when Darius Garland's out there, right? What does that look like? Because as I mentioned, their offensive rating for the season is 111.7. In the minutes that Darius Garland has played so far, their defensive rating is 114.8. So they have been a worse defensive team with Garland on the floor than when Garland is not available. And part of that, I do think, is Darius is certainly not somebody that you look at as a lockdown defender by any stretch of the imagination. I think in that starting 5 for the Cavs of Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, Hunter, and Allen, Garland is without question the weak link there. But I look at this and say that's probably a trade the Cavs are more than willing to make at this point. But I also look at a lot of the other lineups that they trot out there that don't feature Darius Garland and won't feature Darius Garland even when he's fully healthy because he's never going to play 48 minutes a game. Why would you imagine him doing that? And I still think the Cavs have a lot of ways that they can formulate themselves into being a very, very strong defensive team. And I think because of that, maybe being sixth in the NBA is manageable, but maybe the defensive rating number they have right now isn't, because I would expect a lot of the defensive ratings to rise and just things sort of go back to the middle, right? If you will. I think that is something to watch for here. I think 6 might be something that can happen, but I also look at it and say, I don't know if they're going to finish at 111.7. Can they be a top 6, top 7 defense and have a defensive rating of 112.5? Because I think that might be a more realistic thing for where the Cavs are at. I think that is probably where we're looking at this trending. So I do think their defense is more real than the offense right now, but I still think that there's a little bit more that we've got to see, primarily because of Darius Garland. So we've got to look at where the Cavs are in the standings right now. I also want to talk about Evan Mobley. I want to talk about Donovan Mitchell. And I do want to talk about why the Cavs are so much better with Darius Garland. So we'll do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or if you just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay to make an even bigger payout, so you can really capitalize on your winnings. So because I'm recording this prior to games even beginning on Wednesday, I don't have any lines for Friday because nobody knows what happened on Wednesday yet. But what I do have this weekend, which I think a lot of you probably have an interest in, is there is a football game being played Saturday at noon in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I believe it will be played. And that game is between Ohio State and Michigan. Yes, rivalry week is here. In Ohio State, after not winning, I don't think they've beat Michigan since 2019. That's a really long time. Ohio State is a heavy favorite on FanDuel over Michigan. They're 10.5-point favorites over the Wolverines. I think Ohio State's going to get this done. I think they're going to win this game by 3 touchdowns. I'm not personally an Ohio State fan, but I think that this Ohio State team is built differently than the ones from previous years. I also don't think Michigan's that good this year. So I like Ohio State to get it done, minus 10.5 in this game. And you can check that out and everything else FanDuel has, because they've got so much. And right now, if you're a new FanDuel customer, you can get $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up today and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you again for making today's edition of Locked On Cavs your first listen, and thank you for finding us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. We are playing a little bit of a game of real or fake here, and Evan Mobley's concerns are the thing that I think is, one, real, and 2, the most concerning thing about the Cavs so far this year. I got a text from a friend who is a very big Cavs fan the other day, basically just asking, and I don't remember if this was after the Toronto game or if it was after the game against the Pacers or whatever game it was after, or maybe it was the Clippers. I don't remember specifically the date of it, but it was basically like, where are you at? Just what is your concern level with Evan Mobley right now? And I think I'm at the point now, and I know that I spent the entire episode on Wednesday talking about Evan Mobley and just what needs to change, what needs to get better, what's going on right now. And I don't want to necessarily rehash all of that, but I'm at the point where it almost feels like it's a 5.5 out of 10. And I still do think Evan is going to get back to being a really, really good player very, very soon. I think that there are some things that have not gone as well as anybody imagined they would. There are other things that are outside of his control, outside of the Cavs' control, that have affected, I think, his performance a little bit. I'm talking rotations. I'm talking guys' availability in the lineup. I think all of those things certainly matter. But I look at this and just say, he needs to be better. So my concern level does exist. It is a 5.5 out of 10. And as I mentioned on yesterday's show, and I don't want to go over everything again, but I do think that there is plenty of time for him to get this turned around, for him to improve on last year. And even it's worth looking, I think, at who he was prior to that game against the Charlotte Hornets last year, because it's not been all that different, statistically speaking, from who he has been so far this year. It has looked different because his role has been different. And I do think that his role needs to get back to being a little bit closer to what it was at the end of last season But I look at this and say, I am willing to give this more time. If I'm willing to say the offense is fake right now with where they're at, Evan Mobley has to factor into that. I do think Evan's going to get better, but I would be lying if I said I didn't have concern about what his game has looked like so far this season. I think this is the one thing that does need to improve for the Cavs to get to where they want to go to. The next thing that I do think is, for the most part, pretty real has been the play of Donovan Mitchell so far this year. Donovan has had, I think, the best start to a season in his career. And I say that coming off of a game that was not very good against the Toronto Raptors, where he looked exhausted. It was the third game in 4 nights for the Cavs, second night of a back-to-back, had to travel, all that stuff. And because of that, I'm willing to just look past that. And going into that game, he was named the Eastern Conference Player of the Week. He had been fantastic in several games lately. And I think just really doing things, not that he's never done before, right? We've seen Donovan be this prolific scorer. We have seen Donovan be able to go through stretches where he is just absolutely dominant, right? Like, this is nothing new, but the way that he's doing it and how efficiently he's doing it, that to me is the stuff that is new. Like, his true shooting percentage is up. His effective field goal percentage is up. He's shooting over 50% from the floor, which is something he's never done before. All of those things, I think, have led to us seeing the best version of Donovan Mitchell that we've ever seen. And I have no reason to believe that this is fake. I say all that, though, and I think everybody involved would probably prefer if he needs to do a little bit less. What has made this season so impressive for him is how efficiently he has done everything that he's been asked to do. But I do think there's been too much put on his plate. Part of that is because Darius Garland, as I mentioned in the first segment, has only played 5 games. Part of that is because, as I talked about all podcasts yesterday, Evan Mobley has been a little bit underwhelming. Part of that is because they have had multiple rotation players out seemingly every game of the season. The Cavs have not had a single game this year without multiple rotation players unavailable due to injury. So all of that, and that is including Max Strus, by the way, there, all of that adds up to Donovan having to shoulder more weight than he should have to on a team that is as talented as this Cavs roster is right now. But he has done a fantastic job of that without question. I think that if you are complaining about anything Donovan Mitchell has done so far this year, your complaints are severely misguided. I really do feel that way because he's been that good. But I do think that it's in everybody's best interest if he doesn't have to do this much longer. If he can go back into taking that step to the side for Darius Garland, for Evan Mobley, let those guys run things. Now, they have to stay healthy, and Evan has been healthy. Darius has not been healthy, and the hope is that Darius is going to be able to continue to get healthier, and he's not played since Sunday, won't play again until Friday, so that is certainly a nice break for him, and we'll see what it looks like moving forward because the Cavs now go into a stretch starting on Sunday of 5 games in 7 nights, and I would imagine Darius is going to play 3 of them. If he can come out healthy on the other side of that and get into either the Cavs advancing in the NBA Cup or the NBA Cup break, I think the Cavs will then start to feel like they're in a very, very good position as far as that goes. But Donovan's play, to me, has been very, very real. I see no reason why he can't do this. I just think that if the goal is to win a championship, it's not that Donovan can't do this. It's that Donovan shouldn't have to do this, particularly right now. If we were in May and he was doing this and the Cavs were winning, I think that's a different story. But because we're in November, it's something that I think all parties would like to see change just a little bit. Not because he's not capable, but because it's not in the best interest of everybody involved. The last thing I have here before I get to the rest of the Eastern Conference is just where the Cavs are in the standings, how much better the Cavs are with Darius Garland than without. And I think this is real. Now, I know that there are some people who do believe that the Cavs are a better team without Darius Garland. And a big part of that, I think, is, well, what would you get if you traded Darius Garland? And I have been anti that sentiment for a long time. I think the Cavs are much better with Darius Garland. I think he is an offensive engine by himself. Now, he can't be the only one out there, and I don't necessarily think he would be capable of doing what Donovan Mitchell has been capable of doing that I just talked about. But the Cavs are so much better when they have everything that Darius Garland brings to the table. He's an elite level shooter. He's able to get 2 feet in the paint very frequently in a way that Donovan can, but it looks so much different because Donovan has a much more of a finisher's mentality, I think would be fair to say. Kenny Atkinson the other day called Darius Garland a paint invader, which is not a term that I had heard previously, but it's a term that I absolutely love. And I think it describes Darius Garland perfectly. The shot quality for the Cavs when Darius Garland is on the floor, to me, and I've not gone in and done a deep dive on that because the sample size I don't think is big enough. But to me, the shot quality when Darius Garland has been available has been fantastic. They're getting threes that we're used to seeing them get last year. They're getting better ball movement that we were used to seeing last year. Like all of these things, I think we took for granted what the Cavs offense looked like last year. And I think it was easy to do because Darius Garland was healthy essentially the entire season. Maybe not, maybe healthy. He was available essentially the entire season because I do think that he fell off a little bit after that injury in February, and the Cavs weren't as good, but him playing 75 games last year, I think had a ton to do with how successful the Cavs were on the offensive end of the floor. So I look at that and say, yeah, knowing what we know about how they operated last year with him versus without him and what fell apart in the playoffs when he was not anywhere near being healthy, I think it's fair to say that, yes, this team, the difference in this team with Darius Garland and without Darius Garland is a very real thing. I think that Darius Garland means a lot to this team. He's never going to be the team MVP. He's never going to be the best player, but I think he is one of the most integral pieces that the Cavs have. Now, the Cavs right now, as I record this, are at 4th in the Eastern Conference. I don't think that's real. I'll tell you why next right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show is brought to you by DoorDash. The NBA season heating up, and DoorDash has found the perfect way to keep fans in their bag all season long. Whether you're watching for the highlights, your fantasy team, or maybe just your favorite player, DoorDash makes every game night even better. DoorDash is the official on-demand delivery platform of the NBA, and they're celebrating with something called the Bag Drop. Every time an NBA player scores 50 points in a game, DoorDash drops 50% off your order with Dash Pass the very next day. Plus, you are automatically entered for your chance to win the ultimate fan bag. We're talking about player-inspired drip, exclusive gear, and stuff that you actually want, right? Like it's not just, oh, you know, what a gift I don't actually want. No, DoorDash is not doing that. And plus, DoorDash, not just food. You can get everything from snacks and drinks to headphones, ice, even socks. Yeah, socks. All delivered. And DoorDash has you covered for those late night highlights, last minute watch parties, and double OT fuel up. So the next time someone goes off for 50, use the promo code NBA50, that is NBA50, the next day to get 50% off on DoorDash with Dash Pass, plus your shot at the bag drop. Dash Pass members only, 50% off up to $10 a day after a 50-point game with promo code. Terms do apply. No purchase necessary. Ends April 13th. Open to U.S. residents 21 or older. Visit DoorDashInYourBag.com for full details. DoorDash in your bag all season long. Thank you again for making today's edition of Locked On Cavs your first listen. Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first watch on YouTube. And if you are watching right now, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I would love to know, too, in the comments, what you think is real about this Cavs team, what you don't think is real about this Cavs team if you are on YouTube. So drop us a note there as well. So right now, the Cavs going into Wednesday night's action, the Detroit Pistons are in first place in the East. They're 15-2. Toronto Raptors 13-5. Miami Heat 12-6. Cavaliers 12-7. They're in 4th place. I don't think the standings are real at all. I don't. Detroit has gotten off to a great start. They've won 13 straight games. By the time you are listening to this, maybe they will have won 14 straight games. They have been, I think, one of the best stories in basketball so far this season. They look like a much different team than who they were last year, and that team last year was pretty good. But I do think they're an easy team to poke holes in. So the last time the Pistons lost was against the Cavs. It was Monday, October 27th. The Cavs beat them 116-95 in a game that was not that close. Like the game was not as close as the final score would indicate. After that, they beat the Orlando Magic, who at the time were struggling pretty mightily. Since then, they've played much better, and Paolo Banchero has not played much since then, and I think those two things are related. They beat the Dallas Mavericks, who stink, the Memphis Grizzlies, who stink, the Utah Jazz, who stink, the Brooklyn Nets, who stink, the Philadelphia 76ers. They're okay. That's a nice win. Then they beat the Washington Wizards in overtime, who stink, the Chicago Bulls, who stink, the Philadelphia 76ers. Again, solid win. The Pacers, they stink. Atlanta, nice win. Milwaukee, without Giannis, they stink. Indiana, they stink. So the Pistons have done the thing that good teams have to do. They have beaten the teams that they should be beating. And that is not always the easiest thing to do, right? They have beaten all the teams that are below 500 so far this year. And that matters. That is part of the way, I think, to build a 50-plus win team. You have to, in order to do that, you have to do well against teams that are below 500. Right now, the Pistons are 8-0 against teams that are below 500. They're 7-0 against teams that are above 500. Those wins are coming against Chicago, Philadelphia, Orlando, Atlanta. They've not beaten, to me, for me to believe in this Detroit team, I need to see them beat some of the team. And they did beat Houston earlier in the season, and that is a very nice win. That's probably, to me, their best win of the season, and that is not part of this winning streak. That happened the week before they played the Cavs. But I do need to see them beat a team like the Cavs to really believe in them. I would need to see them beat a team like the Lakers, like Denver, like those types of games. And to Detroit's credit, you have to play the teams on your schedule. You can only play the schedule that is given to you. And Detroit has taken advantage of a very favorable schedule so far this season, and they deserve credit for that. But I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, the Detroit Pistons, I think, are a real contender to win the Eastern Conference. I think they're a good team. I think they're a team that can win a playoff series. I don't think they're a team that can win the conference. Maybe they can get to the conference finals, but I sort of look at that as their ceiling this year. The Toronto Raptors, I'm not buying. I don't necessarily think Toronto's all that good. I don't. Scotty Barnes is having a good year. Brandon Ingram's a nice player. I know they just lost RJ Barrett with a knee sprain. And I know they've beaten the Cavs 3 times, which is kind of crazy to say. I've watched them in person 3 times beat the Cavs. But if you look at those games, okay, the first one, the Cavs were without Donovan, Darius, Jarrett. They didn't have a bunch of guys. Like, they were down a ton of guys. Second one was their 5th game in 7 nights, and they were without guys in that one too. And then, as we know, on Monday of this past week, the Raptors played a Cavs team that was missing 7 rotation players. So is that, like, to me, a real statement win the way that it should be? And they've won 8 in a row too, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. But again, they've beaten up on bad teams. They're 7-2 against teams below 500. They're 6-3 against teams 500 and above, and 3 of those wins are against Cavs teams that did not have anywhere close to who they will be. Miami, 6-0 against below 500 teams, 6-6 against above 500 teams. I don't look at the Miami Heat as a team that, like, yes, they are a playoff threat. Again, I think Detroit, Toronto, and Miami are all in this similar bucket. And if you listen to the show during the summer, I think you do know that I was high on the Miami Heat going into this year. I thought they'd be good, and they are. And I feel good about being right about that. But they're 6-0 against below 500, 6-6 against 500 and above. And you have to take advantage of that. And the Cavs have to. Like, the Cavs are 7-0 against below 500, 5-7 against teams that are above 500. They lost to Miami. They've lost to Toronto 3 times. They lost to Houston. Like, yeah, all of those things do matter here in this conversation. And they lost to New York too. But knowing what we know about who the Cavs should be and how unhealthy the Cavs have been and how shorthanded they have been, I just look at the standings right now and say, I know the Cavs are in 4th right now. I know they're 4 games behind the Pistons right now. I would be, at this point, I would be surprised if the Cavs don't finish with the best record in the Eastern Conference. They're not going to have the best record in basketball. I would be absolutely floored if anyone other than OKC has that. But I still think, sitting here knowing what we know, I would be surprised if anyone other than the Cavs has the best record in the Eastern Conference so far this year. I just think that what we have seen prior to Thanksgiving, not necessarily a true representation of what this season is going to bring. I really do believe that. I think Detroit will be good. They'll probably win 50 games. I think that Miami will be good. They'll probably win 45 games. I think that some of these teams that are up there right now will fall. Like, I don't think Toronto's a 50-win basketball team. I don't. I think New York probably is a 50-win basketball team. They're below the Cavs. I think Atlanta, depending on what they look like when they get healthy. Like, I have questions about Atlanta and Orlando. I don't know that we've necessarily learned a ton that I think is super real about the Eastern Conference. I think that in a month or so, when I have the same conversation, because I will do that, I want to try and do this exercise like once a month. But when I do this exercise a month from now around Christmas, I wonder what they look like then. I think that'll be an interesting thing to come back and revisit, because maybe I'm just wildly wrong. Maybe I'm cartoonishly wrong about this and the Detroit Pistons are going to win 60 games. I don't see it. Maybe it could happen, but that's going to do it for this Thanksgiving Day edition of Locked On Cavs. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for starting maybe your Thanksgiving Day with us. Maybe you're driving to see some relatives today. Drive safe. Have a safe, happy holiday. Enjoy the time with your family. I very much appreciate you making me a part of your Thanksgiving if that's what you're doing. So you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Please do us a favor. Give us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. Reminder, the Inside Shot, 50% off all annual subscriptions between now and Tuesday. A link to that sale is in the show notes below. And if you're on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button as we get out of here. Click subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.